This is my Josu Vess Lich Knight Commander deck. It's a mono black. He costs 2 and 2 black for a 4/5 with Menace. But realistically, I only ever want to cast him with Kicker because that's where the value comes. Because he says when he enters the battlefield, if Kicker was paid, then I get to create 8 2/2 Black Knight zombie creature tokens with Menace. And so that essentially means that he does cost 10 mana. Of course, 10 mana commander is a pretty high price to pay, especially if I ever expect to recast him. However, he does have the luxury of being in mono black, and mono black can ramp like no color other than green. So he does do a lot for the deck. He does present an opportunity to pay 10 mana and to get those 8 2/2s, which is 16. Ends up being 20 power, all with Menace on the board for 10 mana. And being a mono black, I do have an opportunity to cast him as early as turn 4, turn 5, if I had the most ridiculous hand. But I often find that I can cast him at latest turn 6, turn 7. And that's really consistently. He does. He has the biggest, most consistent effect that I have in the deck. And in order to get to him, I have to rely on a lot of mono black staples. The primary ones, of course, are Orborg, Tomb of Yawgmoth, and Cabal Coffers. Of course, with these two, all of my lands end up being swamps, and then Cabal Coffers taps for the number of swamps I have. This is a very swamp-heavy deck because I do not want to miss land drops, right? So otherwise, I also have Nykthos, Shrine to Nyx. Black is the most consistent devotion color. A lot of the cards have double or triple devotion that I can use to pay. So Nykthos, pretty commonly, I can pay the 2 and get 5, 6, 7 mana out of it. And that really leads to a much earlier Josu Vess, or a recast Josu Vess if I need to. And then next, I have 37 snow-covered swamps. The reason I chose snow-covered, besides the fact that the art is sweet, is because I have other synergies in the deck that I don't want my opponents to be able to take advantage of if they have a black in their deck as well. So, and of course, all of these work really well with Cabal Coffers. And the next thing I have for the deck is the only Planeswalker the deck runs, which is a Liliana Dreadhorde General. And the main reason I run her is because of the very top line of text, which says, when a creature you control dies, you draw a card. She can easily and often draw me 10 cards a game if she only sticks it once or twice. Once I have a wall of zombies, if I cast her, then they can't get through my zombies to her. And if they board wipe to get rid of my zombies, then she draws me a bunch of cards in recompense. And of course, I can always continually +1 her and get more and more zombies. But most often, I seem to -1 her to make each player sacrifice 2 creatures, because my creatures are a lot more sacrificable than theirs are generally, because I have tokens and they don't always have tokens. But also, the art is sweet, and this is the awesome stained glass frame that I happen to get lucky enough to get in one of my secret layers. And once I picked that up, I had to have a place for it, and I think this is the perfect home. So next, we have quite a big, good-sized zombie package. I started off with a lot of zombies, just because they were zombies, just because I had them. And quickly I realized that this deck, although it is a zombie tribal deck, most of the zombies will come from Josu Vess. So really what I wanted to do is to make the zombies that Josu Vess makes me just be more lethal, right? And so the first thing I did is I kept all of my zombie lords, anything that gives them more power. The best one is this one in the center here, Undead War Chief, which makes him cost left, which is awesome because Josu now costs 9 if he's in play. But then it gives him +2/+1. And remember, they have Menace, so it's especially effective. And then Death Baron also does give them, as well as Skeletons, Death Touch. There are no Skeletons. It's too bad. I really like Skeletons cards, but there's not enough to make a deck, so for now I'll just have to rely on my zombie deck. And then Resin Executioner, one of the least valuable lords in the deck because it costs 4, and it really just gives that +1/+1. And the ability to recast him is pretty steep because he does cost 1 more for each creature card in my graveyard. However, this deck only has about 20 creatures in it, so usually I can cast him for 5 or 6 mana from the graveyard if I need to. And then next we have a few more zombie lords. Lord of the Accursed also gives them +1/+1 for only the 3 mana, and I can give them all Menace. They already have Menace, my tokens do, but it does give my other zombies that just happen to be have cast before that Menace, and it just kind of unifies the Menace theme. And it's one of my favorite lords in the deck. Then, of course, Zombie Master, the oldest zombie card in the deck, gives them Regenerate and Swamp Walk. And Regenerate can really come into play if I have nothing else to do with my mana. But usually I'm trying to continually play threats and kill people with my zombies. So the Swamp Walk can come into play more than that, especially if I have that Orborg from earlier. Everybody's got swamps because I made them have swamps. And so now I basically have unblockable zombies. So that's a really, really good synergistic zombie. Even though it doesn't give any buff, they're already two menace creatures. And generally they're bigger than that because of all the lures and the other buffs I have. And then the center one here is Cemetery Reaper. It does let me exile creature cards from a graveyard and put a 2/2 zombie in the field. So it's another way to make even more zombies, although they don't, on surface, have any sort of evasion. And then the very last one, I misspoke earlier. This is actually maybe a lot of zombies have been old as magic. This one, it does let me regenerate a zombie card, or return one from my graveyard to my hand. And so this one, just a very synergistic piece for getting back my other lords, because often having 2 or 3 lords in play and being able to cast a Josu Vess, having 5 power creatures, a whole wall of them, all with menace, is enough to take out at least one player. And generally, the way that the thing that keeps me from winning is not picking the right person to kill. But that's really the trick, I guess. And then, so the only 2 enchantments in the deck are Grave Pact, which of course means that if my stuff dies, their stuff dies as well. And I really like it because of the devotion. I've got a couple of cards in here that deal with the black devotion, whether it be the Nykthos or some cards you'll see here later. But the triple black mana is pretty steep in a multicolor deck, but it's not such a big deal to try to play it in a mono black deck. And then a Cover of Darkness is a card I don't see often. But for zombies, it's absolutely perfect. It's very cinematic to think that my zombies are more dangerous at night, right? And of course, giving them fear, I just love it. It's very, very flavorful, but also very effective for 2 mana to give my zombies, make them even harder to block. Fear and Menace both together are very, just a very fun combination. And then next, we have some other zombies here. And these are not lords, but they're just really good zombies that make the deck go. First, we have Gravecrawler. Anything in the deck that cares about the number of zombies I have really benefit from having a Gravecrawler. It also gives me an early turn play that's not ramp. I can also fit in 1 additional mana just to cast Gravecrawler, and he can generally always be brought back just to present a little bit more damage. And with all the lords and the other pumps I'm going to have, he's generally at least a 4-power creature that can't block, but that doesn't matter because zombies don't need a block. And then we have Undead Augur. And now this one it does make me lose life, but it does draw me cards. So we've got to hope that I present a big enough threat that I don't die to him before, I can eliminate my opponents. But if I'm drawing cards and I'm presenting a threat, then it's probably not a problem. And then, of course, Sidisi. Generally, this is one of the handful of tutors I have in the deck, and 99 times out of 100, he gets me my Cabal Carvers or my Orborg, just to be able to have a real consistent, hard-to-deal-with way in order to cast my general. And then next we have Shepherd of Rot, Noxus School, and Vengeful Dead. Shepherd of Rot's really fun because although it hurts me, it hurts everybody. And generally, because I'm trying to swing, unless there's a more aggressive deck at the table, he's going to be the difference maker in getting that first 5 or 10 or 15 points of damage in, so that when my zombies attack, I can take out 2 players, or maybe even 3, before they have a chance to get rid of them. And then Noxious School is just another thing. If I cast my Josu Vess and Noxious School's on the field, then all the non-zombie creatures on the battlefield get -9. That's generally a one-sided board wipe that doesn't affect me. And the art is just fantastic. And then lastly, we have the Vengeful Dead. It's really just a aristocrat card on a zombie. But it only works for zombies. But that doesn't matter because that's all I'm playing is zombies, right? The art is kind of goofy, I think. I'm not a huge fan of it. It looks more like an ogre that's died or something. However, a very effective card. And then lastly here, like I'd mentioned, the Devotion does come into play with my Gary, the Grey Merchant of Asphodel. This card, with this deck, with the number of pips that I have, of course, it presents 2 pips. If I have Josu Vess out, that's 2 additional pips. And then if I happen to have my Grave Pact or something out, it's often draining the table for nearly 10 damage. And usually this right here stabilizes me, keeps me in the long game and allows me to kill players. Since I'm using combat damage to kill everybody, he's usually enough to keep them from ganging up on me too bad and keeping me from killing them with my zombies. Because my zombies, they have a lot of recursive ability and they just keep coming, you know. And if you can keep, I can easily make way more than 10 mana. So even if they kill Josu Vess, that's generally just a good thing for me. The biggest worry I have usually is that they kill my zombies and they leave my Josu Vess and I don't have any way to get rid of him. And then that's really the biggest thing I'm going to worry about. And I have answers for that as well. But next we have a Plague Engineer. It also has Menace, which is sort of a recurring thing for this deck for my zombies. And it's just much like my Vengeful Dead from a moment ago. It's just another thing that hurts everybody if a zombie I control dies. So I do love the Aristocrat cards, and this deck is no different. So next we have my artifacts. And with artifacts, like I said, I do play my snow-covered swamps for a reason. And these 3 cards here are the reason, right? Cage Sun, Extraplanar Lens, and Gauntlet of Power. And these all let me choose a land type or a color or a card name, depending on which one we're looking at. And then it doubles the mana that I, or in the case of Extraplanar Lens, everyone gets. And of course, that's a giant downside for Extraplanar Lens. Usually people don't play snow-covered swamps. So that's, you know, one good side. And these things, besides the Cabal Coffers and the Orborg combo, these are another way that I can get to just ginormous amounts of mana and kill my opponents with that advantage that I've gained. Ideally, without helping them too much before I do that, right? And then so next we have a couple of my cards that add power to my zombies, right? Starting with my Conda's Banner. Conda's Banner is a card that's really fun, but I can't play it very much because it has some stipulations attached to it. It's 2 mana, legendary artifact equipment, and it says I can only attach it to legendary creatures. And of course, that's a problem. This deck doesn't have that many legendary creatures. It may as well just say only attach it to Josu Vess, right? But once I do attach to Josu Vess for that 2 additional equip mana, then it does give all my other zombies the +1/+1 because they're zombies, and +1/+1 because they're black. So the additional +2/+2, just with Josu Vess and his tokens, that automatically means all of my tokens are 4/4s with Menace, and that can be quite a bit. And so then we have my Door of Destinies. This card generally is pretty consistent for getting me at least a +2/+2 advantage, because I always want to play it before Josu Vess, and generally before that I've cast at least one more creature. In some fun scenarios, I'll have a sack outlet already available in my Grave Crawler, and I can continually cast my Grave Crawler, putting additional counters on my Door of Destiny, so that when my Josu Vess finally hits, my zombies come in as like 15 zombies. And so that's why we have it, really just for the Timmy upside that it presents. And then last we have Coat of Arms. And Coat of Arms, like I've said in other things, is an extremely dangerous card to play because of the random creature types that are shared amongst my opponent's creatures, as well as the fact that tribal decks in general are very popular, especially amongst new players or players that tend to keep their decks without dismantling them. You'll see a fair amount of tribal decks out there, so you really don't want to cast this until you're about to win, but man, it does in the game. And then next we have, like I mentioned, some utility cards. My Ashnod's Altar. Ashnod's Altar is primarily here in order to keep me from having a stalled Josu Vess stuck on the board with no other creatures. Sometimes the board wipes will kill my zombie tokens, but will leave my Josu Vess. And when that happens, I don't really have anything to swing with. He's only a 4/5, and it's not presenting a very quick clock. Also, Vidal Canori is good in any deck where you want to pay a lot of mana in one turn, and you really want to reduce the amount of interaction people are going to have. Because if you can reduce it so that it's only counter spells that you have to worry about, that really, really helps. Because generally what I'm worried about is I cast my Josu Vess and then wait for the table to go around the table and somebody casts a board wipe, and then I've got to recast it. And of course they're down a card and they're down a board wipe that they could have used later, but I'm down 10 mana or more, and that's really, really difficult to have done. And Vidal Canori and all decks where you have room for it, where you don't need the synergy pieces to such high numbers, just very, very good card. And this deck, of course, no different. And then next we have my Expedition map. Of course, yet another way to go get the Cabal Coffers. because it's such an important card for the deck, I have to have just ridiculous amount of ways to go get it. Otherwise, the deck just doesn't function. And people that see the deck, whenever I meet them in person, I haven't played against it before, or when I play on my MTGO account and play with them versus it, they do not give it any respect initially. When I've played it like conventions and things like that, people don't respect the deck initially. They go, oh, that's kind of fun. They think it's some ridiculous deck, and they don't really give it the proper credit that it can kill them by turn 6, turn 7. And when it does, it's very, very satisfying. But in order to do that, you have to have lots of redundancy, and you have to really go get that very broken Cabal Coffers. It's sort of the necessary evil for this deck. But I don't mind some necessary evil in this case because they are zombies after all. Then we have Bantu's Monument, which is yet another aristocrat piece for my tokens. If you're playing tokens, it's good to have some upside, but it also presents yet another ramp piece for all of my creatures, and I like that. And Bantu is sort of the god of the dead creatures in the Amonkhet locker, how it is. So it's thematic as well, and I like that also. And then next we have some cards you'll just see over and over in any deck tech for anybody, and that's Soul Ring and Arcane Signet. Being able to cast my early mana as fast and efficiently as possible is good in any deck, and this deck is no different. Then we've got some larger ones, things that I've stopped playing mostly, but in this deck I have to hit mana no matter what I do. So I have crazy redundancy for mana efficiency, and Thran Dynamo and Gilded Lotus, which I don't have in a lot of decks individually, but this deck is it just absorbs the mana. However much mana you can play with, this deck will want every bit of it and keep asking for more. And so these cards fill that role. Next, I have my Heraldic Banner. I really like Heraldic Banner. The 3 mana ramp has sort of become less flashy. You see it a lot less. People don't want to pay for their indestructible 3 mana taps for any color sort of Darksteel ingots anymore. However, this one does give my zombies that small pump. And so I feel like I'm paying for a 2 mana taps for any color, and then I just happen to also be paying for a 1 mana, give all my creatures +1/+0. I really feel like it's 2 cards in 1 with this deck, and that's why I like it. And the heraldry part of it kind of works with Josu Vess because he's a knight. And next we have Panharmonicon. If Panharmonicon's in the battlefield and I cast my Josu Vess, I actually get 16 of my 2/2 zombies. So instead of just the measly 20 power with Menace, I get an additional 16 power. And so that's 36 Menace power just because I happen to have played my Panharmonicon first. And again, that's without the pumps. And then lastly, we have the Immortal Sun and Vanquisher's Banner. Both of these cards, although the Immortal Sun, of course, does a little bit more, they both present card draw and a buff. So, of course, the Immortal Sun also does reduce my creature spell. So that card just does everything. I love it. And then Vanquisher's Banner. I haven't been able to play a whole lot because it is 5 mana. It's not crazy efficient, but because it does both things in this deck, and because I'm trying to go so wide with a specific creature type, I really like it. And I think it fits with the theme of the Josu Vess being a knight as well. And then next we have some of my sorcery speed spells. Starting with Feed the Swarm. This card is sorcery speed. I don't love sorcery speed removal. However, you kind of have to sometimes resort to less than favorable removal if there is additional upside. And with Feed the Swarm, it's hitting enchantments. And being in black, I don't have a lot of answers for enchantments. So this card is just sort of the best option we have if we're playing mono black. And Feed the Swarm in a zombie deck, are you kidding me? That is just great. I mean, the flavor is completely overwhelming. And this Cannibalize, that card is uglier than crud. It is just an ugly card. But what it essentially does is a 2 mana sorcery speed, exile and removal. And yeah, I give another one of their creatures a +1/+1 counter, but exiling removal in black for 2, it's just too fun. It's definitely a card that could be replaced with a better card. However, look at that card, man. It's so ugly. I just love it. And we'll continue on with my sorcery speed cards. And we'll start with Sign in Blood and Village Rites. Now, both these cards just start out my card draw package. I cannot miss land drops. I have to try to get to my any of my tutors in order to get my Cabal Coffers. I have to try to get to my Lords in order to prevent more power. And so every bit of card draw that I have is awesome. Village Rites, I can sometimes get lucky and sacrifice, one of my zombies that I don't care about early in the game, or a zombie that I can recur, or a Gary that's already come in and done damage. But also, it presents yet another option to get rid of my stalled Josu Vess, right? So the cost is minimal, and the upside is great, and that art is just fantastic. So, and then we have Sign in Blood, 2 mana to draw 2 cards. I don't care about the life. I'm trying to kill them way before it matters. Then we have 4 more card draw spells. We have Siphon Mind, Night's Whisper, Read the Bones, and Ancient Cravings. All cards that let me trade life, or this last 3, trade life for cards. And then a Siphon Mind, another card that I've been playing more and more often, which makes my opponents discard cards and lets me draw that many. It's not normally that big a deal for them, but sometimes I play in games that have 5 and 6 players, and 4 mana to draw 5 or 6 cards is a really good deal. And the last card draw spell we have is Promise of Power. And Promise of Power generally is 5 mana to draw 5 cards, but every now and then, because I can present so much mana, it also can make me a ginormous demon. And of course, demon, I wish it was a zombie, you know, but the fact that it's just upside, and demons and zombies isn't that bad, especially since Josu Vess seems to have escaped from some sort of hell landscape. And then we have all of my board wipes, starting with these 3. And so Dead of Winter, really another thing that synergizes with my snow lands, giving non-snow creatures. I don't have very many snow creatures. In fact, I think I have none at this point. But just being able to cast 3 mana to wipe the board, usually in its entirety of creatures, or in this case, yes, just creatures. It's a very good deal. And then we've got Necrotic Hex, which makes everybody sacrifice 6 creatures, and I create 6 2/2 zombies. Generally, if they're not a token deck, they're not going to have 6 creatures. It's very, very rare that somebody gets more than 6 creatures out of 6 individual cards. So, unless I'm playing some crazy Saproling deck or something, Necrotic Ooze generally is kill everybody's everything, and then I'm the only one that gets something. Of course, it's 7 mana, and that would be normally enough to make me not want to play it. However, because I can buff the zombies afterward, and because I can make crazy amounts of mana on such a consistent basis, the fact that it's 7 mana makes it playable. And possibly only this deck amongst all my decks. And then last, we've got Decree of Pain. This lets me destroy all the creatures and draw that many cards. Often, my opponents are playing Sacrifice Outlets, and they can sacrifice their board in response so that I don't draw cards from theirs. But usually, I have at least a few creatures, and so 8 mana to destroy everything, and even to draw 3 or 4 cards is still a fairly efficient rate. And if it came down to it, I could, of course, cycle it. But I think I've done that like 1 time ever, and I don't expect it to happen very often. So continuing on with my board wipes. I have Kindred Dominance, which of course, I always choose zombies. And then I destroy all non-zombies. And so that's crazy, just very, very, of course, it's got demons in the pictures, but it's close enough. And then in Garruk's Wake is another way that I can one-sided board wipe, and that art looks fantastic. And Garruk kind of looks like a zombie there, so I like that. And again, these cards are very expensive on their mana cost. However, it doesn't matter if I get all the mana. And then my last 3 board wipes, starting with Overwhelming Forces. Now, this particular version of Overwhelming Forces does say that it destroys my opponent's creatures. However, in the Oracle text, it does say, if, for example, in the Judge promo, that I choose a target opponent and then I destroy all of their creatures. So it only hits 1 person. However, it does destroy all of that person's creatures. So it's sort of like, much like my Decree of Pain, it's often destroy all the creatures and then draw at least 3 or 4 cards, or destroy all of somebody's creatures and draw 3 or 4 cards. Still pretty good. And then Blood in the Snow, the art is just fantastic. That's reason enough to play it. But it's another synergy piece for my Snowlands. And if it comes down to it, I can also destroy all Planeswalkers. And I don't have a lot of answers for Planeswalkers. They're not something I see often. But every now and then, they just get completely out of hand, that it's nice to have another answer for them. And of course, Damnation, the most efficient, or one of them, the second most efficient, I should say, blackboard wipe. I don't play Toxic Deluge because I'm already paying so much life and I don't want to kill myself. Also, I get arch-enemied quite a bit, so I really don't want that to happen. And then lastly, if you have all the mana in the world, what can you do with it? And of course, there are lots of answers, but one of them is Exsanguinate, yet another card that I can, like Gary, before it, where I can pay a bunch of mana into it, and then I can just restabilize myself and possibly kill one of my opponents in the meantime. Of course, there's another X mana black spell that everybody likes to play, but it's not very thematic, so I don't play it in this deck. And then we'll go on to my instant speed spells and start out with my 2 tutors, both of which should say go find Cabal Coffers. Right, Scheming Symmetry, this is maybe my favorite Magic art that's ever been made. I just love it. I love how it reminds me of a playing card, and Seb McKinnon is, I mean, we all know he's amazing. That's not something anybody debates, but this one in particular is just fantastic. And then, of course, the very menacing Demonic Tutor older art. Both these cards are just in here so I can try to make crazy amounts of mana, or a board wipe if it came down to it. But generally, these say, go find Cabal Coffers. And then next we have 2 instant speed removal spells, starting with Baleful Mastery, a card that just came out a little while ago. But instant speed, exile a creature, and I will always pay 2 mana, even if I have the mana almost, and let somebody draw a card, because that is just too good a deal. And of course, Victim of Night, maybe not the best card that it was ever printed, but it does say non-zombie as part of the creatures that won't destroy. Very thematic, and it's one of the things that, even though it's not the best, I have made an exception and played it because of it's so on theme. And the very last card, a card that I put in 3 decks now, but I haven't got a chance to ever cast it, and that's Rise of the Dreadmarn. It lets me foretell it, so I pay 2 and turn it face down, and then I can cast it at some point for that 1 single mana. And for every non-token creature that died this turn, I create that many 2/2 black zombie creature tokens. So I kind of have to overextend in this deck, and if I happen to have this foretold for 1 mana later on, I can just keep holding that up. And if anybody decides to get antsy or decide they don't want to be the next zombie victim, you know, they decide to wipe it, then boom, got my zombies back. And when it comes to my turn, there's a whole army waiting on them still. And they're only 2/2, and they don't have menace like I would like for them to, but that's okay. I really think that'll perform pretty well in this deck. I'm pretty excited to play it at some point, but I don't know when that might be. And lastly, although that is my entire deck, I tried all sorts of zombie tokens, and I finally found this at a convention. This is my Walking Dead. Of course, doesn't have menace on it, and it's not a 2/2, but this is my artist proof Walking Dead that is signed by the artist, and this is what I use as my token for all the things. And of course, with artist proofs, the back of the card is white. I don't know if you've seen that before, but it's really neat, and the art's fantastic, and so this is what I use as my zombie token in every game. If you like zombies as much as I do, maybe consider Josu Vess. The mono black nature of it, I think, is the most thematic. I do like the Demir, but they make me think of more of Frankenstein's monster sort of zombies. And these zombies, you know, the from hell they come sort of zombies, I think are more thematic. And I think you have all the cards you need in this sort of deck, and nobody produces zombies like Josu Vess. Anyways, thank you for watching my video, and goodbye.